there's a lot of coaches listening that they're tuning into this thing, looking at the title, and they're like, I want to have a little bit more insight into how do I work with my clients throughout this period of time. And what you're proposing is that you start with a conversation, right? And you, instead of a coach saying, I work with someone that's going through Ramadan, how do I fit fitness around Ramadan? Are you saying they should have a conversation with their clients and start to ask a little bit deeper questions and, challenge their clients a little bit on what they should or shouldn't be doing in fitness around this time? Like what would step number one be?
Yeah, we're presuming there will be challenges. I'm just saying that I think that is the starting point, is to ask about just, yeah, and we're jumping right into like the deepest aspect of consulting right there, but I just don't want to waste the time of taking the 7-step approach to getting to those deepest pieces, right? Otherwise, anyone could do a show on exercise through Ramadan and how do you like manipulate nutrition and et cetera, and I just no one's asking the hard questions. It's like, well, what is the formal deepest beliefs and intentions of people observing this? Okay, well then, where does fitness come into that? And I think it's like number 12 on the list, honestly. So yes, I think that you want to have coaches push the idea of saying, well, what is our intentions around this, and how do we be grateful for our opportunity for physical expression, and how does this fit into what we're working with here for 30 days, so we can actually have the best expression and observance of what we're trying to do here for these 30 days. So yes, ask the tough questions around intentions, and then you can try to figure out exactly where they're ready to move and shake and how to balance things for what we know as principles for resisting entropy and maintaining vitality and balance for 30 days.
Yeah, let's say you're there, right? Like, coach listening, they have that conversation, the stars are aligned, and they're like, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. What would you propose X, Y, and Z be? Obviously X, Y, and Z has to be personalized, and it has to fit in with their intentions and so on and so forth. But what are some principles around someone not eating from sun up to sundown for 30 days? And what are they doing in their exercise program, resistance training, energy systems training? Like, what are some principles around that?
Yeah, you're asking me to be very generalized in my answer, and I appreciate that challenge. And it's tough for me to answer it that way. It's a complex answer, but you have to take it into context with principle. So first, you want to figure out what this person's experience is with this whole thing, because experience will largely dictate the positives and negatives they had with going through this in the past. What is their training age and history, all the principles we know about assessment, and figuring out exactly where they sit in this whole thing, right? And that largely dictates, okay, well, what is the effect of exercise going to have on you? So someone comes in, great, blood sugar balance and great muscle coordination, great pacing capability, great maturity, great cognitive function. I mean, what are we talking about here? We're just manipulating a few variables. Someone comes in brand new to exercise, thinks that broadcasting, commercialization, commodity of exercise is the big thing, thinks that intensity is the answer, is not really having a good balance of lifestyle, doesn't eat cleanly, and now what are we doing to this period of time? I can tell you what not to do. You don't do intense activity. You don't do cortisol dumping, high intensity group classes. That's what you don't do. You don't do I haven't exercised for a while, so I'm just going to go out and run 10K and see exactly if that can motivate me to kind of get going again. That's what you don't do. Then what do you come back to what you do in general principles? It should be slow resistance training and easy aerobic work, because both of those on a physiological basis with the preempting of experience are not going to cause the most damaging dose response that requires hydration or fuel acutely. And so you need to say, well, what are the things that they can practice in the day, if they can, during those times, that are going to be capable. If they can't practice exercise, or maybe you can give me some idea on the allowances for practices of physical expression during the day, then you have to say, well, where am I going to meet them where they're at, but also take into consideration that they are going to be, in very reductionist terms, dehydrated and low on fuel. If that is the case, you got to say, well, what physical expression will not take away resources from people, which is an electrical expression and anything that can be sustained for a long period of time. So then if you're like, well, I don't even know if they can practice both of those, then that's up to you to design a training program that gives them good electrical stimulation and sustainable work for as long as possible. And then that can be done, in my opinion, quite frequently and quite a lot. And when you go a middle zone, which is just random shit or, you know, incorrect design, not treating someone where they're at, etc., then you're going to pay the price of admission, which is blood sugar mismanagement, possible, you know, cases that could cause some serious issues for people and health complications.
What's the intention of that resistance?
Or in the worst case scenario, in the worst case scenario, a dependency upon, like, you know, the sun goes down and you're going to fucking go for it for 90 minutes. And now you're at a complete, you know, depleted state, but you got your kick on, and now you're going to create some kind of a deprivation of fuel. You're going to result in sleep disruption. I mean, it's just going to cause this nasty duct tape scenario for 30 days.
So intention of the resistance and aerobic training that's happening in this month-long period, and obviously this has to be set up in conversation with the client like you were discussing earlier, James, but is the coach, when they sit down to program, thinking about like, how can I get this person stronger? How can I push their aerobic progression? Or is the intention of the program to have them move and enjoy fitness every day?
Yeah, that it goes back to the training age and experience you got from the assessment.
Yeah.
Because you have to take into consideration what experience do they have, because then you can figure out what their actual movement and adaptation will occur in 30 days. So if someone is, you know, brand new, then by all means you can like push to improve things in 30 days, because still the dose response in resistance and easy aerobic work is going to result in some improvements. So you're actually intentionally trying to, you know, improve it, but it's indirectly adapting anyways because of, you know, what they're capable of expressing. And then you take someone else with lots of experience. No, you're basically just, you know, keeping things steady for 30 days and maintaining some of those physical fitness characteristics. Yeah, and I don't want to move it off into that area, but, you know, offline or another time, we could talk about that, because there are some really interesting nuanced stories of scenarios in which things have to be maintained during 30 days. And I find that really interesting. And there's some research on that, performance during Ramadan, as well as nutritional changes during Ramadan. And I find that fairly interesting. Not to sidetrack it, but that's when it's really important. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think
in regards to that,
the World Cup was going on during Ramadan.
at one point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's also important to think about what is their Ramadan experience age as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because you do have, you know, you have people that, you know, they do their first Ramadan when they're 35 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they've been training for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, you know, having the ability to have a conversation and talk about, you know, how has Ramadan felt the last decade is super important for people to understand. And it's easier to connect what they cannot do, what they should not do if they've experienced that, you know, for 10 or 20 years. But if someone's jumping in, they're like, I've actually never done this before. Like I've fasted, you know, one day. I've fasted one day out of 30 before, but I've never gone 30 straight days and fasted throughout the day. I think that's also important to understand. Like, what are people's experiences in Ramadan, you know, separate from fitness as well.